Okay, so very encouraging. I didn't expect so many people to be in this talk. Very good. By the way, I have to apologise if my voice kind of disappears over the course of this presentation. I've been battling a cold over the cold rather over the past week, and it's my voice. Water here. Okay. All right, let's get on with it. Meet the MySQL database, the IKEA of databasing. It's my attempt to be funny there. I'll explain that a little bit later. First, a little bit about me. Imran Chaudhry. I'm pretty new to the world of bloods. It's about the second time I've been to a lug meeting. I'm formerly from London. I moved to Southampton last year, and my employer is a Smoothwalk, which you being a Linux crowd hopefully would know from the GPL firewall claim, Smoothwalk Express Firewall. I'm employed as a Perl database guy for Smoothwalk, and surprise, surprise, we are using MySQL as Smoothwalk, using MySQL 4. And we're using it in quite a critical way. We're using it in an application which is pretty much key to the operation of the company. I was interested, or crazy enough to be interested in MySQL enough to be certified, and you can see that from the stickers and whatnot here. But that doesn't necessarily mean I'm any smarter than you guys. It just means that I've been interested and passionate enough to actually study for certification. There could be some of you who have, for example, looked into replication much more than me. So, I'm also the group organizer of a MySQL user group, South by Southwest. Now, there's only 3 members at the moment, and we haven't actually had our first meetup, but it's something I'm hoping to sort of develop over the coming months. The URL's up there as well if you want to take it down. And I'll talk a little bit later on about the user group. So let's start with the basics. What is MySQL? MySQL is a database. And what is a database? Well, a database is, in a nutshell, an organized collection of data, organized in such a way that it makes it easy for a computer program to ask questions of it, meaningful questions of it. And 2006, our information age, a lot of things are stored in databases. For example, anything from email to contact data on my PDA is stored in a database. MySQL in particular is a family of databases called a relational database, sometimes abbreviated as RDBMS, Relational Database Management System. Now, I won't go too much into the depths of what relational means, because we can get too mathematical there. But essentially, the essential concept about a database is that it's a collection of data, a collection of knowledge. And knowledge is represented by a model in a database. And the most common model in use today is the relational model. Not only does MySQL use it, but its competitors, Oracle, DB2, Microsoft SQL Server that you've all read about, they use it as well. Along with the relational model, you have to have a language to actually manipulate and get at the data. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on. I won't go too much into depth of what the language is at the moment. The IKEA reference here is that MySQL is made by Swedes. It's made by MySQL AB. IKEA, in case you don't know, is the Swedish manufacturer of low-cost, high-quality furniture. And MySQL is manufacturer of low-cost, high-quality database technology. Version 5, which was released October last year, approximately at the same time as its 10-year anniversary of MySQL, it's not seen as a toy database anymore. It's got features such as triggers, views, store procedures. These are all big features that you can put in a white paper that Oracle, DB2 and all the big competitors have. So these other competitors are now looking in their rearview mirror and seeing MySQL looming up sort of closer and closer. It's developed in the open source methodology, yes, but unlike a typical open source project, the MySQL code is owned by MySQL AB themselves. And it's licensed under GPL. If you're a software application developer and you want to use MySQL in your solution, sell it for pots of money, you have to buy a commercial license. So it's licensed under a dual license, not only GPL. It's multi-platform. If you go to MySQL website, you can download MySQL binaries in all kinds of different architectures: Windows, Linux, FreeBSD, Apple Mac, Solaris, the list goes on and on. In fact, if your particular weirdo hardware isn't supported or your operating system isn't supported, you'll probably download the sources and with a little bit of tinkering get it to work and compile on your particular operating system. The central part of the LAMP stack, what does LAMP stand for? Linux, Apache, MySQL, and P, your favourite programming language, Perl, PHP, Python, or Java indeed. Java's been used more and more with MySQL. The talk after this will be on Ajax, which is another cool sort of web technology, and often MySQL is powering Ajax applications. So you go to your website, you'll see your list of music CDs, so you cover the music CD with your mouse and up pops a track list, and that track list is often derived from the database. Well, alright, sounds good. Where do I get it from? Well, you can download it from mysql.com/downloads, and when you're there it's under the heading Community Edition. Alright, but who's using it? Well, you'll find it in the engine rooms, surprisingly, quite a lot of corporations these days, from NASA to Nokia. But it's also being used in quite high-profile web properties these days: Wikipedia, Friendster, MySpace, and a little company called Google. So, let's take a bird's-eye look at a typical MySQL installation. What does it look like? It's my handy-dandy diagram here. I apologise for the bits a bit crude here, but limited amount of time. So, we have the MySQL server there running in the center. On Linux, it's typically running as a daemon process. On Windows, it'll be a service. And it's managing access to the databases here, which in a typical database is represented by files and folders, directories. Along with the stock MySQL installation, you get a bunch of programs that help administer and access the database. For example, MySQL dump lets you take backups to the database. MySQL check lets you repair tables, optimize tables, and MySQL admin, which helps control access to the database, revoke users or add users. Also, pick your favourite programming language and there'll be a way to get at the database with it. There's a concept of connectors, and you can think of connectors as a dialect in which your application or programming language talks to the MySQL server. So, for example, at Smoothball we use Perl, and we use the Perl DVD connector. Similarly, Java you'd use the JDBC connector. You might be using an application, for example, OpenOffice Base, which is sort of like a Microsoft Access application for the Linux world, and that would use the ODBC connector, which is an open standard. An application that uses ODBC should, in theory, work with any database that is ODBC compliant and has an ODBC connector. As well as that, you could be using client applications. Some typical client applications are MySQL, which is the command line client to MySQL. I'll talk a little bit about that later on. There's also a couple of GUI applications. There's the Query Browser and MySQL Administrator. Again, I'll talk about them a little bit later on. PHPMyAdmin, which is an increasingly popular way of managing databases remotely through a website. And the list goes on.
All those third-party applications, all those external GUI clients, are they not compatible with UTF-8 and those new? Because I used to use MySQL front, but it doesn't like it anymore since I updated to version 5 and I have the Unicode correction.
Right. I'm not sure actually your question, but there will be time for questions after.
Okay.
So I'll be in the hallway or something. Find me there. All right. Okay. A few slides ago, I mentioned that MySQL uses the relational model. It's a language as well to actually get at the data. And the language that most relational databases use is SQL, sometimes called SQL. You can call it either SQL or SQL, but I guess it's the difference between Linux and Linux, that kind of confusion. There's two broad categories of statements in SQL. There's the data definition. There's data definition language, which is a category of statements that let you create tables, create columns, or drop tables. And there's data manipulation language category of SQL, which is things like selects, inserts, deletes, updates, to let you actually manipulate the data. Again, don't worry too much about all the different categories. You'll discover that there's another few categories in SQL, but these are the sort of two most important. I'll show you a few examples of these a little bit later on. So we'll go for a simple example where we'll create a database, create a table, fill the table with data, read the table, and a little bit more stuff. Here we go. So, an example here, we're logged into the MySQL server with the MySQL client. Our prompt up here, and the first thing we do is just create a database. So this is an example of a data definition statement: create database. Create database bookshop, use bookshop. The next thing I want to do is I want to create a table. I want to create a table called book. And I have my table definition here, which I supply to my create statement. So I'm actually representing the table here with two columns, one an ID column, one a name column, called the name of the book. I'm actually creating the ID column with an auto increment table column type, which basically means that every row I insert into that table will have an ID automatically incremented against it. So create the table definition against the database, bang, it's in there. Describe the table book, and there we can see I've got the ID column there and the name column. It's giving you some information here that the ID column is a primary key. Primary key is a way of uniquely identifying each row in a table. Forgive me, I meant to mention that earlier on when I talked about relational models. And it's telling me some more information about that column that it's an auto increment type. So we go to the next slide. I realised that I forgot to add a publisher column to my table, so I use another data definition statement. I use alter. Alter table book, and I want to add a publisher column to it. So we put the statement in, alter table book, add publisher, bang, and it's there. Describe the table again, book, and it's there. ID, name, publisher. Okay, all fine and dandy, but now I want to fill my table with data. How do I do that? We use the data manipulation language category of MySQL, and we insert some values into the table. So I'm inserting three books here, and I mentioned before that we're using an auto increment column, and rather than actually putting in the values that I want to, rather than putting values into the column, that's handled automatically, I put a 0 instead, and that way MySQL will handle all the numbering for me. You'll notice in my third value here, third row, I'm using a null value because I don't know the publisher of this book. Now nulls are a way of saying you don't know what data is going to be in there. So rather than having holes, rather than having a 0 or a blank field, a blank value, I want to have something null to represent an unknown value. If I had blank in there, someone reading that might think that the publisher is called blank or something, I don't know. Okay, so I select my table, I select all rows from the table using data manipulation language. get my 3 rows there. Okay, so now we have one table in our database. We've got some data in our database. Let's try and ask it some meaningful questions. Very simple example here. So what I want to do is I want to find out which book has a publisher name of O'Reilly and has the word Pearl in it. In real life, we'll give you about 1 million results this, but in this example, we've just pulled out row number 2, Pearl Cookbook. So select start on the publisher, so O'Reilly, and name like Pearl. Again, I won't go too much. Don't worry too much about the exact syntax if you're new to MySQL and SQL. Just if you can get the loose concept, that's fine.
Why don't we return that row? Because the name's got a capital P in it, what you're looking for has a small p.
Very good. It's case insensitive.
Always? Or can you turn that, or can you...
You can turn it off, but by default it's case insensitive. I'll explain after the talk. Ask me again, I'll explain why. Okay, so that's a simple example. Asking a question against the database. But the scope is just over a single table. So now, let's bring another table into the mix. We've got another table here called copy sold. And what does it look like? We've got a book ID, and against that we've got a number of sales, a count of the number of books sold. And now we're going to use a more complicated example to get some ask questions of our data. And here what I'm doing is I'm effectively joining 2 tables on a shared column value which is common to both tables, which is the book ID. So if I go back on, the ID here is the book ID, and my other table that I'm joining to the column book ID here, the shared column. So in my select statement, I select the columns I want, I join the 2 tables based on the shared common value, book ID equals copy sold book ID, and I have an order statement in there as well. And here's the result. Now, those of you, all being good, those of you who are interested enough of this presentation to use MySQL could probably benefit for some sort of basic tips and advice, and I'm going to explain some of them here. One is to use a config file on a per user basis. What do I mean by the config file? I mean something like this. The config file is just, MySQL config file is structured so that each category of program that ships with MySQL has its own configuration section. So there's client, all client programs, MySQL dump, the MySQL command line client. There's a category just for the MySQL client and a category for MySQL dump in this example. But in real life, you'll see, in the real life configuration file, you'll see another section for MySQL server, MySQL D. So here I'm saying all client programs pass the user value of admin, password. Again, you might not want to use this if you have a production system. Probably not a good idea to have the password in the config file, but in the development shop you might want to have that. And the default port, which is 3.3.06. Don't worry about that. And here I've got for the MySQL command line client, I want to pass it these parameters: safe updates. I want to change the prompt from the boring MySQL to something more meaningful. Here it's going to display the username I'm logged in as, the host name, and also a database name. And also I can select a default database to log into. So here I'm asking to use the database world. Similarly for MySQL dump, I've listed a bunch of configuration information here, which saves me having to sort of remember it whenever I type it in each time. Reduces line noise. The other major tip which I found, actually people who have quite a lot of experience with MySQL I found benefit a lot from this tip, is /G at the end of your MySQL at the end of your SQL statements to display results vertically. I'll show you a little example of that. So here I've chosen to select 3 rows in the country table limit, and it's so long that the lines are wrapped around there. It looks pretty nasty. You can't really tell what's going on. The columns don't easily correspond with the values in there. If I use /G at the end of that, it becomes much nicer. All the values are now in a line vertically. Go back a few. Along with the base MySQL installation, there's a bunch of support files, a bunch of support programs, one of which is called MySQL Secure Installation. And what that basically does is, guess what it does? Secures a MySQL installation. Because did you know that when you install MySQL from default, your root account does not have a password against it? So this will take you step by step through the installation, and it will give you an option of setting a root password if you want to, deleting any anonymous accounts if you want to, and securing MySQL at the file system level. MySQL by default comes with a test database, and it will also give you the option of deleting that if you want to, because no doubt there might be a vulnerability in the test database, or an attacker might be able to use the fact that you've got a test database. GUI interfaces, I mentioned in that bird's eye diagram that there's a couple of GUI interfaces to MySQL, so I'll just show a few of those now. One is Query Browser, which provides a nice point-and-click way. This is produced by MySQL themselves. It's from the horse's mouth, as it were.
It's free.
It's free, yes. Provides a nice point-and-click way to get at your data. It stores all your statements that you've already given it through this statement bar here, and there's even the MySQL. You've got the MySQL help already built into it, functions, parameters, etc. Another thing was the Query Administrator, which provides database administrators sort of bird's eye view on the database, and it lets you configure it in quite a bit of detail. Resources. The main resource that I often use is the mailing list, but I mention the forums here because as newbies you're often asking a lot of questions that have been asked before, and the forums have got a search function, a nice search function there where you can put your question in and hopefully bring up results where your question's been asked before. The mailing list, that's something that that I'm subscribed to. I find it very useful, and even if you're not, you can learn a lot by just lurking on the mailing list. Again, that's the URL for it if you want to find out more. It's archived on the MySQL website, and the archive is searchable, so like the forums, you can search for questions. And the last thing is the MySQL user group, which I'm trying to start. You might think that, why do you need a user group when there's books and all these other resources out there? Well, the point is that you can only get, there's some knowledge that you can only get from other users. Things that are undocumented, all the glitches and bugs and undocumented features that are in any software product. I was talking to the head of one of the American user groups, and he was telling me that he learned that with MySQL, there's several ways of backing up a table. I think there's 5 or 6 ways. But through the user group, he found out the quickest way was literally just to lock the tables he's interested in and zip up the actual table files themselves. So there's stuff like that. It's not just technical knowledge you can pick up if you have problems or you need support from fellow users. It's good for that as well. So that's the URL for it. And again, like I mentioned, we haven't had any meetups or anything, but I hope to roll it up with our lug meetings here, our Hampshire lug meetings. So if you're interested, please let me know. Finally, I'm starting a project called atomdatabase.org. No, it's not a competitor to MySQL, I'm not that crazy. What it will be is a way to register free MySQL accounts, MySQL 5 accounts, to do whatever you want. But also the real value will be you can register, there will be a way to register MySQL 5.1 accounts, which is the beta product. And the idea being that any debug information that I collect through that, I'll feed back to MySQL, and they will create a stronger, better database for us all. Further talks, well, it's up to you. If I get feedback from this talk, I'll present other talks. I can think of plenty of other topics. For example, query enhancement, using indexes, using the query cache, replication, security hardening MySQL. There's plenty of other sort of material there that I can sort of think about talking about. If you've got any questions, you can ask me now, or you can find me later in other ways. That's it. Thank you very much.